And so it grew and has become not only a much bigger thing, but like the majority of my full-time work is now spent on this project, which it just became bigger than I could have ever dreamed of. Yeah, I love it.
Being the first woman of color sound designer on Broadway, and so far number 9 out of a list of women sound designers on Broadway, is very scary. It was scary when I first got hired. It was scary through tech, and it's still scary after the show opens. Of course, I'm happy for myself, but the nervousness comes in when I think about I have the responsibility of making sure my work is good enough that other women of color will start getting hired, not in 10 years, but in 2022 when more of these new shows open. So I'm carrying this burden of, if other women of color do not get on these new shows, does that mean I did something wrong?
Everyone says like there aren't that many, but really there are. We just, I think prior to now, haven't been paying very much attention to them.
What the data shows is that we female directors, particularly musicals, are all over the place in regional theaters and in nonprofits and off-Broadway. But then when it comes to making the jump to Broadway, there's a fall off, and it's pretty drastic.
It's a very male-dominated industry, and that's not true just of audio for theater. It's true for audio in general, or any sort of engineering field, right?
Almost every orchestrator I've ever spoken to can point to a mentor. And there's actually this amazing book, it's called The Sound of Broadway Music. The author's name escapes me in this moment, but it kind of traces the lineage of mentorship over the past 150 years in Broadway orchestration. There's rarely, if ever, a woman mentioned in the book.
But there are so many women of different races who I know, who I'm friends with, who I've worked with, who have hired me for jobs, who are out here, who I think are more than qualified to be doing a bunch of these shows.
We mentor people who remind us of ourselves. Like you mentor somebody who's like, that's a mini me. And so for literally centuries, like mini me's have always looked a certain way. And I think that the reason there are not more women in this field is because in a craft where you kind of have to like luck out with a mentor to make your way into that, the odds are very, very clearly stacked against people who don't fit into that demographic.
I think of directing a musical as running a business or being the coach of a major sports team, because you are often working with 100 different people who are reporting to different people, but ultimately it's coming back to you and the producers. And so I think people see that role as the role of like a CEO, and we know what statistics tell us about women in high-level positions in business, generally speaking. So I think we're suffering from the sort of the same stigmas. I think the importance of having women on creative teams can't be overstated, and not just one woman.
I sometimes wonder, like, how did I think, like, what made me think that I could come in here and do this? Because it surely wasn't seeing somebody who looked like me do the things that I am doing.
We need to have more stories being told that illuminate a world that we want people to see.
I also want people to be paid enough for their work, respected for their work.
Or telling women's stories. Of course they should be part of that creative process. It's their experience, right?
It's essential for people who have a marginalized experience to have a voice in telling those stories, or they're gonna get told wrong.
The nuances of how we are spoken to, of how we are treated, of the expectations can only be seen from our viewpoint.
It helps to bring another perspective to a story that's not often there.
I don't think it's enough to see those people in assistant roles. I think we need to see like leaders who represent all backgrounds and genders and races and whatnot, so that people who don't have a mom like I did telling me that I could do anything that I wanted will see those people and believe that they can get there.
It's important to broaden our audience, to broaden our stories. And then we will be able to broaden the representation of both women and people of color in our creative teams. I don't know that it will ever be enough.
You know, I think it's about what is the story, who is telling the story.
The number of women on a team will be about the story we wish to tell.
We should never be opening a playbill and seeing a team that contains all white men.
The people who are already in power, whether that's a general manager, producer, artistic director, or director, is for them to make a conscious decision to hire someone else.
The statistics on female directors on Broadway, particularly of musicals, are still pretty atrocious.
We should never be looking at a name in a playbill that's like, oh, that's the one woman.
Not simply to fill a gender gap, but with keeping in mind that women are just as capable as a man of doing these jobs.
We don't want to hit a quota. There's no quota involved with making things better.
It'll be when we don't feel like we need to push it anymore.
More than what it is now.
We should always pursue that end goal of more.
You just get started.
We spend a lot of time talking about like going to school and studying the craft and gaining the skills, and like that's all like great. And then what, you get the degree and the skills and you like touch down in New York and you have the skills, but you don't know anyone. So I would just encourage people to be bold in what you ask for.
Do not underestimate the opportunity to connect with people.
Not to be afraid of reaching out to someone you don't know.
My advice would be do everything. Like be an A2, be an A1, haul cable across a football field, push boxes.
Any opportunity in any corner of the theater is valuable for people who want to become directors.
You know, be a stage manager. Like, you don't even have to do audio stuff, but if you want to be working in theater, you know, direct something.
Don't ever lose sight of your own creativity in order to facilitate your bread and butter job.
Just don't stop being curious and do all the things, do all the jobs, you know. I feel like I'm a better sound designer than I could have been because I know how to build a mic rig.
I think we have to learn how to be better at opening the pipeline.
Some of the existing structures that exist in our industry are not meant for us. They're not meant to let new people in. They're not designed for new voices or new talent.
We also are in the midst of a moment where we're catering to an audience that's not ready to hear it.
It has taken me until this point in my career to be like, oh, you just have to build your own ladder. You just have to build your own new room where you aren't asking anybody to be let in because you are the person letting people in. And I wish I'd known that many years ago. It would have saved me a lot of banging on doors.
I'm quick, inspired, then wired from ambition that is seeping out my skin. For hire, admired, so green, the potential is just waiting to kick in. I sail a brand new ship unseen by the people of the patriarchal plains. But I'm tired of navigating, they're underestimating me. I'm my own best kept secret. They're happy I keep it, so they keep it. But it's time to build a bar and then I'll leap it. Set fire to the shadows and make my own light. She fought our war in boardroom and tennis court. She flew and then she climbed. She ran her race while chased by opponents, but she crossed that finish line. until we're condescended to and pursued, looked over, looked at, and then looked through. She is unknown, unwritten, will revive the woman hidden. I'm my own best kept secret, and they're happy I keep it, so they keep it. But it's time to build a bar and then I'll leap it. Set fire to the shadows, make my own light. Someday I'll play my hand and call his bluff, and we'll reminisce about this stuff. When we were green and days were rough, we'll fill the room and be enough. And she'll pick up the phone to call her up, and we'll reminisce about this stuff. When we were broke and broken up about our wage and their rebuffs. Enough is enough is enough is enough. Enough is enough is enough is enough. Oh, yeah. I'm my own best kept secret, but I'm not gonna keep it. I won't keep it. But it's time to build a bar and then I'll leave it. Set fire to the shadows. Set fire to the shadows. Set fire to the shadows. Make our own light.
I think we should always strive to be better and hold the door open for another woman.